Now let's bring on the Mountaineers. Goes around the after 50 to 10 to 5. A touchdown with Virginia. He did it. He did it. That's the Dwight. Beavers are he's gone. Touchdown. Tavon Austin. As the hills of West Virginia resound with the sounds of Golden Blue football.
They want to have a 7-on-7 drill. We want to make it a fist fight. Nothing cheap, nothing dirty, but West Virginia football.
From the heart, streaming, it's Mountaineer pride. Leave no doubt tonight, no doubt. They shouldn't have played the old Golden Blue.
West Virginia is a special place. People are the state that have great pride in this WV logo.
Ain't no stopping the Golden Blue.
It is a great night to be a Mountaineer wherever you may be.
What's going on, Mountaineer Nation? Welcome into another live stream here on the Country Roads Webcast channel. November 6th edition here for this week's snap counts, injury updates, and depth chart projection, as we've been doing every week here throughout the season. We'll break down the injury updates provided by Neil Brown on his press conference today, which not too many of those this week that we actually got. Maybe we'll get some more details on that as the week progresses, or as we hear, some of the assistant coaches' press conference. I haven't got a chance to tune into those yet, which obviously this stream's coming a little bit earlier in the day than what we typically do. And the reason being for that is because West Virginia basketball tips off tonight. They got a game coming up at 7 against Missouri State on ESPN+. Obviously, we've released a preview on that here at the Country Roads Webcast. But as you all well know, we do post-game shows following the West Virginia basketball games. So couldn't do the snap count stream tonight because we're going to be doing a live post-game show for the West Virginia basketball game tonight. So the good news is you get 2 streams in one day, and actually it's going to be 4 videos total today coming from us at the CRW, because I released the BYU review and reaction podcast this morning. I released the player grades video, the 2 pre-recorded videos. Now we're coming at you with the snap counts live stream here, and then later tonight be coming with the West Virginia basketball post-game show live here as well. So with both sports coming, running simultaneously here at the same time, no better time to be subscribed here to the Country Roads Webcast. So stay tuned here with us if you already are. And if you're not, definitely this is a great time to do so. Costs you nothing, and you get all kinds of Mountaineer sports content. And we'd really appreciate that, just as we appreciate and encourage anyone that's in here live. Drop your questions, comments, concerns in the chat. I'll address those throughout the stream. I realize there may not be as much interaction on that side of things with us doing it earlier in the day, but that's okay. Hopefully you guys tune into the playback, and if you don't get a chance to chat live here, come chat with us when we're live again tonight following the WVU basketball game. But if you are in here live or watching it on a playback, you can still help us out just by simply clicking that thumbs up button, moving your mouse over, moving your thumb over, whatever it takes. Hit that little like button. Helps us a ton, helps this video hit the YouTube algorithm, which helps its performance and future videos performances for us here on the channel. So with no further ado, let's lead this thing off with the injury updates for WVU football this week. And the only 2 that Neil Brown really provided in his press conference, I was hoping to hear something about Bryce Biggs. Know that he went down when the reserves were in the game for West Virginia. Didn't really get an update on that, but we did get an update on 2 West Virginia starters that we're hoping to have back for this game against Oklahoma. I had my fingers crossed that West Virginia may get the offensive line back to full strength for the first time in a long time. It'd be perfect timing to be able to do it there for the game in Norman, but it is questionable as if that's going to happen, because that's the update that Neil Brown gave on Doug Nestor pretty much, was that it's questionable at this point and depends on how he practices this week. And then the other injury update that Neil Brown provided, of course, was on Hudson Clement, because we kind of believed that he would return this past week. Neil Brown said he was available in an emergency situation, but wasn't 100%. So that's why they didn't play him. They want to get him to 100%. And they're hopeful for him this week, but it's an ankle injury. So you got to see how those things, respond as far as when you're trying to cut and things like that, especially being a wide receiver and needing to run the routes that Hudson Clement does. But Neil Brown did mention that he is hopeful that they can get Hudson back, because he feels like he could be a big play guy and someone they could definitely use for this game against Oklahoma. So that's pretty much all we got as far as the injury updates were concerned today. So we'll move right into snap counts momentarily. I'll update the snap counts for West Virginia against BYU, both on the offensive side and the defensive side. And then following that, I use the injury update, the snap counts from the previous week, and of course a little bit of guesswork to project out a depth chart for West Virginia this coming week of how I think the two deep will shake out for the game against Oklahoma. As you may have noticed, West Virginia hasn't really been releasing depth charts this season, so I've decided here on these snap count streams to project one out, of my own, kind of something I do anyway. She's always trying to track that stuff. So why not share it here? And it's been a lot of fun doing it throughout this season. So that's kind of what we do here on Mondays during these snap count streams, and got one portion of it out of the way with the injury updates. Going to hit the next portion of it now with the snap counts. And then of course, close out with the depth charts, but of course, encourage you, drop any questions, comments, concerns you have in the chat there along the way. I'll touch on those throughout also. I'm going to take a swig of my coffee before we get into the snap counts. Hey, Hoops from the Hills, what's going on, man? Good to see you, Paul or Coos. I'm guessing it might be Paul, but I appreciate you, man, hopping in here live for a second. Good to see you. I know you guys are excited for this WVU basketball season to tip off tonight, like I am. Cautiously optimistic, obviously, with everything going on, but should be a fun game, and excited to see this new look team, and of course the new face leading the way as the head coach and Josh Eilert. So we'll see what we got when it officially counts tonight against Missouri State, but excited about it, man. And glad to see you hop in there for a second. Appreciate it. Moving on now to our snap counts. We're going to go ahead and hit that up, but anyone else in here live, appreciate you guys hopping in here live. Share your thoughts there in the chat on anything you want to talk about. I'll address your comments throughout as we continue here, as always. But leading it off here, we'll do the offensive snap counts first here. Let me scroll up here. All right. So against BYU, obviously 67 snaps for Garrett Green, and then you get 15 snaps for Nico there when the reserves came in at the end. And, I thought we actually had a good performance from both of these quarterbacks. And if you watched the player grades video earlier today, PFF agreed both of those guys in the top 5 player grades on offense for the Mountaineers. And, Garrett Green continues to be pretty dynamic, and I think we're really going to see more of that against Oklahoma. He talked about in his post-game press conference that he didn't run the ball as much, and he wasn't expecting to coming into this one. I think we saw the game plan obviously was rely on the running game for the most part with the running backs, and then let him hit some shots off the play action. So I think a lot of that was, saving his legs, making sure, he's 100% healthy heading into Norman in this game against Oklahoma, because he's really going to be counted upon some in the run game. I think this Saturday, I think they're going to put a lot on him in terms of the read game, and we're going to see hopefully a really good performance from Garrett Green against Oklahoma, because we're going to need that on Saturday if we're going to have a chance to win that football game. We're going to need to have Gigi at his best. And then as far as Nico, he continues to impress when he does get into the action. I love that look off the jet sweep when you had the quarterback power or quarterback counter action off of that, and great run for him, explosive chunk play on his first play in the game there, and did good on his 15 snaps that he was able to get. So it's always good when you can get him some reps in the football game, and especially it's always good when you're getting your reserve players in there late in a conference game, something that we haven't had happen at West Virginia in quite a while. Then at the running back position, obviously we know the 1-2 punch that was very formidable for the Mountaineers in this one, and that was the explosiveness of Jaheim White alongside the power of C.J. Donaldson. Both of those guys getting it done. C.J. Donaldson really impressed me in short yardage, and of course you guys know how I feel about Jaheim White that follow us here at the CRW, but 34 snaps for CJ, 31 for Jaheim, and they made the most of their attempts there. 146 yards for Jaheim, 102 for CJ in the 2 touchdowns, and then 19 snaps for Justin Johnson. A lot of those coming late with the reserve work. And if you watched our depth chart projection last week, I told you guys, despite the fact that Justin Johnson started that football game, I thought with CJ Donaldson's resurgence, it would be CJ back in the starting lineup and Jaheim White is the second. Those were the 2 running backs I had in my projected 2 deep for this week. That proved to be true. So, our depth chart projections aren't always 100%, but they've been pretty accurate for the most part throughout this season. Moving on to the wide receivers, where West Virginia got a lot of work, as you see some of the walk-ons getting in late in the game here down towards the bottom there. But we'll lead it off at the top, where Devin Carter paced the wide receiver snaps, leading the way with 49. But the most surprising and impressive, I guess, for me here as far as the wide receiver snap counts were concerned was how about Rodney Gallagher getting 44 snaps in this game. We've talked about these true freshmen really starting to be involved more here in the latter portion of this season, and look no further than Rodney Gallagher as someone who's really been involved, and they involved him heavily in the game plan this week. A lot of everything that they were doing play design wise was off of his motion, whether it be, that orbit motion that they used earlier in the season. They used that combined with the jet sweep motion in this game. And one of my favorite things that they did was they started to play with a little bit of an end around action, kind of with him in jet sweep motion, then coming orbiting around the quarterback. And then later in the game, they showed that same look, and Garrett Green spun all the way back around and handed it off to Jaheim White on it was actually just an outside zone, but you get that same look that you gave earlier, and it's pretty tricky for the defense. And then if I'm not mistaken, they gave that same look and then had a quarterback run designed off of it as well. And that's something that I think that they've done a great job of with the game plan, is showing looks of different things that they've used this season, but having different plays designed off of that. You've seen that with that toss play out of the shotgun, where they've had multiple options with it, including Garrett Green runs, Cole Taylor up the seam, Cole Taylor up the rail. And you're going to continue to see them, I think, be creative with their play design, taking things that they've been successful with that they know teams are going to game plan for, and adding little wrinkles to it that'll combat the things that are the way that defenses are trying to attack them. And the way that they used Rodney Gallagher III in this game was a big showing of how they can do that. And I think you'll continue to see them be creative with him and some of these other players in the offense as well. I talked about Jaheim White and CJ Donaldson. I'm expecting them to use them in some two-back sets this week against Oklahoma. And Neil Brown also mentioned, one of the things that stood out to me in his press conference today was he was talking about DJ Oliver, because, as we covered, he made that great tackle on special teams. CJ Donaldson's talked about him hitting 22 miles per hour on the GPS. So there's a 240-pound guy that can really run. And I've mentioned that he's going to be a really good running back for West Virginia in the future. But Neil Brown stated that he has played 4 games. I hadn't realized there was that many for him. So now they have to decide they either don't play him again this season, he maintains that red shirt and can be a redshirt freshman next year, or they play him and he will be a sophomore next season. They're going to talk to him this week and kind of decide what they want to do. But it was interesting to me because what Neil Brown added there was that if DJ Oliver does decide to want to play, they're not only just going to use him on special teams, he's probably going to start getting some carries in the offense or getting involved in the rotation a little bit, because if they're going to use up the red shirt, they may as well use him. So if he does decide to play, I was thinking about it because I'm thinking of things that they can throw at Oklahoma that they haven't seen. Some of the two-back sets with Jaheim White and CJ is one of them. But how about a wrinkle of throwing in a guy that they have no film on at all, essentially, in DJ Oliver? Would be kind of a interesting wrinkle. But continuing on with the snap counts here at the wide receiver position, 43 for Preston Fox, and made some really important plays. Graded out really highly on PFF as well with his offensive grade. And Neil Brown mentioned in the press conference today, a lot of that is because he does some great blocking on the perimeter for the Mountaineers, helps in the run game to go along with all of his consistency in the pass catching game as well. Of course, the one that stood out was the one that he went up and caught in the back of the end zone. 35 snaps for E.J. Horton. He's continued to have his role increase in recent weeks and is really, making the most of it. Obviously, we've seen West Virginia attack downfield with him. Late in the game, they took a shot on 4th down to him. Looked like it was there. Couldn't quite connect. But what I was impressed with in this one was we've seen his speed as far as beating defensive backs downfield. But in this game, we saw his speed, catch the ball on a screen pass and really get up the field with the ball in his hands. And that was impressive here late in this game. 20-plus yard game for him on a screen pass. Traylon Ray, 34 snaps, but what was most impressive was on one drive, he had, 3 catches and 42 yards, and they were all, 3 plays in a row. Literally ended up in the end zone, but they blew his forward progression dead. And that's another true freshman that's going to continue to, be impactful on this offense, I think, that's all of a sudden very explosive for the Mountaineers, right? And then you got 10 snaps for Jarrell Williams, who's, had a handful of snaps in recent weeks. He even got a carry on the jet sweep late when West Virginia had the reserves in. And speaking of those reserves and the walk-ons that I mentioned a little bit earlier, C.J. Cole got 10 snaps and Tyler Evans got 2 snaps to round out the snap counts there at the wide receiver position. And then moving on to the tight ends, of course, it's mainly been Cole Taylor exclusively for the most part this season. You saw them dominate the snap counts again, 55 for Cole Taylor. I believe he was targeted 6 or 7 times, only came down with the 1 reception, but it was surely an impressive one. Hit him on that fake toss, going up the seam, makes 2 guys miss, and then carries another one on his back, diving into the end zone for that 43-yard touchdown. 30 snaps for Traylon Davis, who is very unheralded with what he does in the West Virginia run game and helping out in pass protection. Also have targeted him in the pass game a couple of times in recent weeks. Haven't been able to connect on those, but I think that that's coming down the line. But I like seeing 10 snaps for Victor Wickstrom. That's, one of West Virginia's international players, and he's a guy that I think eventually is going to get involved in this tight end rotation. Of course, in future seasons, look for him and another guy like a Will Dixon to get involved in that tight end rotation in future seasons. So glad to see him get some experience there with the 10 snaps, and West Virginia getting a lot of offensive linemen involved in this one as well, as you see the long lists there. 67 snaps apiece for Wyatt Milam at left tackle, Zach Frazier at center, and Nick Malone at right tackle, filling in for Doug Nestor. 62 snaps for Brandon Yates. Was glad to see him come back in after that injury scare. Was very worried about that. West Virginia can't seem to stay fully healthy on that offensive line. If they can get Doug Nestor back, they will finally be there, and let's hope that nothing else happens, knock on wood, because I was a little bit scared when Yates went down there. 61 snaps for Thomas Remack. Glad to see him getting back involved in the action heavily and looking like he's back fully healthy. 23 snaps for Jaquay Hubbard, continues to be, the key reserve for West Virginia along with Nick Malone. 17 snaps for Sully Weidman, and that's a youngster that this coaching staff's really high on. And you saw him make a play early in the game. I believe it was West Virginia's first touchdown. It might have been the second one, but I think it was the first one when CJ was stopped up at the goal line, it looked like. And then here comes Sully Weidman, who was in on that play, bumping him into the end zone and get him across the goal line for the touchdown. And, they had a few young guys play in this game that they're high on that offensive line. And one of them is true freshman Johnny Williams, who we know is huge, especially for his age. And I think he's going to be very good at the tackle position for West Virginia down the line. Got 15 snaps in this game. Love seeing these young guys get reps. Another true freshman, Cooper Young, got 10 reps. Landon Livingston did get in the game and get 10 snaps. We know that Brandon Yates, got in as the reserve center first, but later on, Brandon Yates came in and did get in for 10 snaps and got a little bit of action there. So that's good to see, getting some other people involved there at the center position for the future. 8 snaps for Bryce Biggs. Would have been more, but like I said, he's the one player that went down with injury. That was the only negative to getting those reserves involved, was you saw one of them go down, and it's a guy that I think could be a good piece down the line, and Bryce Biggs. So hopefully it's nothing too critical that's going to keep him out long term. And then another true freshman, Nick Cray, got involved on 7 snaps. So those are the snap counts for the West Virginia offense. Sorry, I muted myself there a little bit too quickly. You guys know I'm one to do that. Actually, funny enough, you guys know I've done it on a couple of live streams before where I've gone, a few minutes and then had to tag it in the comments and timestamp the times that I'm muted. But recording the BYU review podcast, I got about 9 to 10 minutes into it, looked down, seen I had the soundboard muted, had to go back and redo it. And so that was kind of weird, redoing the first 9 or 10 minutes and feeling like deja vu, saying some of the similar things that I just said. But having said that, we're going to hit these snap counts for the defense momentarily. Wanted to come back, catch up on your all's comments, and take a swig of my coffee here, and then we'll hit the snap counts on the defensive side before moving on to a depth chart projection for this coming week for WVU football as we get set for a big showdown against Oklahoma in Norman. Let's go Mountaineers indeed, John Kelly. Always appreciate you, man, tuning in and chiming in. Great Mountaineer fan. And Hoops from the Hills bringing up a great point. Appreciate that, Paul. If you're here before or after, don't forget to drop a like. It really means a ton. Yeah, can't express that enough. It really does help us out a lot here on YouTube. That's why I always try and say it, helps this video's performance and helps further videos performances as well. It's not just a saying, it truly does. Hitting that like button goes a long way. So whether you're watching this live now or watching this after the fact, take a second, hit that thumbs up button. It'll help us out a ton. John Kelly says, love the work on the young players. Going to need everything perfect to beat Oklahoma. I absolutely agree. That's one thing I've said about this game against BYU is I was very excited to see, because it's something I've been clamoring for all season. Earlier in the year, we had the defense playing great and the offense, was working the kinks out. Then we got the offense playing good the past few weeks, and the defense was leaving a little bit to be desired. And I think for the first time all season, we got both of those units playing good together against BYU. But we were missing the other key piece that really helped us earlier in the season, and that was us being a very disciplined team that doesn't beat ourselves because, we racked up the 10 penalties against BYU, just doing some uncharacteristic things that we haven't really done this season. And I think, as you state there, John Kelly, we're going to need everything perfect to beat Oklahoma. So I think we're going to need the trifecta there. We're going to need the offense playing well, the defense playing well, and us playing smart, disciplined football where we're not beating ourselves to be able to beat the Sooners there in Norman. And I believe we can do it. We've came very close. Last time we were there in 2021, Garrett Green got some action in that game, called Oklahoma off guard, and that was a unseasoned Garrett Green, I guess you could say, compared to where he is now. So I'm hopeful that West Virginia is going to come out and perform well in that football game. But on the other side of that coin, I'm a little bit leery because Oklahoma is coming into this game having lost 2 straight. So, they're going to be pissed off as well. So it's a little bit of a mixed bag there for me as to how I'm feeling about the game. I'm obviously nervous just because it has such huge implications, and I want West Virginia to finally beat Oklahoma and to beat a good Oklahoma team, of course, and to beat them in Norman would be really special, especially when you're in the thick of the Big 12 conference race and can effectively eliminate Oklahoma out of it on their way out to the SEC. Would be awesome to see for sure, John Kelly. Appreciate that, and appreciate everyone that's in here live. Encourage you guys, continue to chime in with your thoughts, questions, comments, concerns there. I'm going to hit up the defensive snap counts here, and then I will hit up my depth chart projection for the week before we get ready to close out before too much longer, and hopefully get ready to catch a Mountaineer basketball victory this evening. That's what we're hoping to see, right? But moving on to the defensive snap counts here. Obviously, when West Virginia had the kind of dominating performance they did defensively, especially through 3 quarters of the game, having a shutout there until late in this contest, they didn't play as many snaps defensively, so that's why you see some of the snap counts lower, and you also had the matter of getting the reserves in late in the game on the defensive side as well. But that's also fun because that means we have more snap counts to talk about this week. And on the defensive line, 28 for Sean Martin, the leader of that defensive line, of course, from the same high school as me, and I went there many moons before he did there, Bluefield High School. Shout out Mercer County, which I thought was really awesome. I don't know if you guys caught it on Neil Brown's radio show this week prior to the BYU game. He gave an awesome shout out to Mercer County and Bluefield High School, was talking up Coach Simon, the coach there, and how big of a fan he is and how he was one of the first people he talked to after the victory over Pitt, and he was really emotional about it. But what I thought was really cool was Neil Brown talked about Mitchell Stadium, which is the stadium that the Bluefield Beavers play in, and he said he thought it was one of the best high school stadiums that he'd ever been to. And that was just really high praise from Neil Brown. And I thought that was super cool that he shouted out Mercer County and gave him that type of love there in his radio show. But I digress on that. Then moving on to 27 snaps for Eddie V, Steady Eddie, as you guys know, I like to refer to him as because he's so consistent. 25 snaps for Tomi Durajaye, continues to be an impactful transfer coming in. And don't forget, he's very young as well, a redshirt freshman making this impact. 21 snaps for Mike Lockhart, and they really, with that low snap count, kept him fresh, and I thought he had one of his better games of the season, as did Hammond Russell at the nose tackle spot. How about him standing out in this one, getting involved in a sack, playing, more snaps than he had been recently, getting 18 in this game. And then you get 17 snaps apiece for Fatorma Mulba and Jalen Thornton. Jalen Thornton really starting to come on as well, had a fumble recovery last week, did some good things this week. And then, of course, our guy here at the CRW, Brad, he loves Asani Redwood. That's been his guy since he committed to the Mountaineers, and I was super excited to see him, get involved in the action this week, share that sack with Hammond Russell. He's going to be a big pass rushing piece for West Virginia down the line, I think. It's a guy that racked up a ton of sacks in high school and has put on a ton of weight and had an incredible recovery, a speedy recovery from an ACL injury that he suffered not too long ago. Played 14 snaps in this game, looked really good doing so. 13 snaps for Day Hawkins. I'm hoping to see him get more involved this week against Oklahoma because, this is a guy that I talked about throughout the offseason that I thought would wreak some havoc. I think that West Virginia's defensive line was obviously more deep than I expected, and some of these other players that we brought in have really impressed me more than I thought that they would and made an impact a lot bigger than I thought they would. But Day Hawkins is still a very good player that I think can make an impact, and he has at times this season. Hopefully he will yet again over the final 3 games. And then you get Corey McIntyre Jr., the legacy player, son of the former West Virginia great that went on to have a great NFL career there, getting 6 snaps there on the defensive line, and they really like his future there at the nose tackle position as well, being only a true freshman this season. The bandit spot, of course, it's pretty much exclusively been Jared Bartlett and Tyron Bradley this season, save for a few games, but luckily for the Mountaineers, this was one of those games. You get 35 snaps for Bartlett, 27 for Bradley, and then 8 snaps for Torres Simmons. Like I said, been few and far between this season, but like to see him get involved in the action and get some experience. Linebacker position, Lee Koba leading the way, 52 snaps. Another great performance for him, graded out very high on PFF's defensive grades. And then Ben Cutter, I think, is really, you can see the game almost starting to slow down for him. He's making more tackles. He's around the ball more. And he's really, you can tell he's studying film better and understanding things better because he's blowing up plays as if he sees them coming, getting a couple TFLs again in this one in his 40 snaps. But what I was most excited to see here on the snap counts was 12 snaps for Tyreek Austin Cave. The Miami transfer is finally healthy, and it's big to see him get on the field, and I hope that he's able to do that over these final 3 games after the news, later in the week that John Faveras was unfortunately, out for the rest of the season. West Virginia doesn't have a lot of linebacker depth. Had Caden Bowser playing in a reserve role. He continued that in this game with 18 snaps, but you're going to need Austin Cave, I think, to handle some snaps there and take some off of both Cutter and Koba. So good to see him get involved in the action with 12 snaps. Hope his snap count increases moving forward because I think that he's got some potential there. And then at the spear position, still kind of easing Hershey McLaurin back into it following his injury. Got him involved in 24 snaps, but then, Mr. Do-It-All, jack of all trades, Marcus Floyd, who's kind of floated all around the field for West Virginia this year, playing the spear and a nickel position type area, and then even, playing deep safety at times as he's had to be the reserve guy there for the Mountaineers. Got 42 snaps in this game, played really well. You saw him blitz off the edge a couple of times and make an impact as he has a few times this season. And then Raleigh Collins getting in late. Didn't get as many snaps in this one as he did in the prior game, obviously with Hershey McLaurin getting back into the action, but still keeping him in the mix and allowing him to get some experience there with 10 snaps. And then the cornerback position, this is where I'm glad to see West Virginia trying here in the past couple of weeks to find a way to get Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin some rest. One way they've been able to do that is by moving Ruffin to safety and having him be the guy that spells Burks and Wilson a little bit, and you get Jacoby Spells in at cornerback, which is great to see that it seems like the coaching staff is starting to trust Jacoby Spells more and more. Maybe he's really starting to, come into getting closer and closer to reach his potential because we know how highly regarded he was as a recruit, and maybe they're going to work him into this to where, next season, of course, he can move into that starting role as he's probably going to have to when West Virginia, moves on from Bishop and Ruffin. And Bishop and Ruffin have been playing a ton of snaps. We knew, that couldn't continue. In the past couple of weeks, West Virginia has found ways to lower their snap counts a little bit. You saw that again this week. 56 for Beanie, 53 for Malachi Ruffin, and 26 for Jacoby Spells. And then the same thing goes for the safeties. They've needed to find a way to take some snaps off Burks and Wilson. That's been Marcus Floyd, that's been Malachi Ruffin a lot, but West Virginia was able to work some of the young guys into this game, and of course the walk-on in Wilcox. But 56 snaps for Aubrey Burks, played his best game of the season by far, 90-plus grade on PFF. I think he was the highest graded safety defensive-wise on PFF this week overall in all of college football, if I'm not mistaken, on those 56 snaps. So excellent performance from him. And an excellent performance from Anthony Wilson, I thought, as well. 49 snaps for him. We know he's a great tackler, but in this game, I thought he did some good stuff pass coverage-wise, and I think he is finally starting to come along a little bit there. That's been something he's been trying to improve throughout his career. And, we've seen him get an interception in the past few weeks. And then in this game, you saw him break up a pass to the big BYU tight end, despite the huge size discrepancy there. And I loved seeing that from Anthony Wilson on his 49 snaps. And I loved the bounce back from the West Virginia safeties. They were really harped on, a couple of weeks ago, called out by the coaching staff even. And I think that they took that personally and responded in a good way and had probably their best performance of the season for Burks and Wilson combined. And then you get 8 snaps, as I mentioned, for the walk-on Avery Wilcox and 2 snaps for Christian Stokes to round out our snap counts here this week on the Country Roads Webcast snap count stream. Got a dry throat. That's one reason I keep tripping over my words. Take a swig of my coffee here, and then, of course, we will get to the depth chart projection using the aforementioned injury report and snap counts and a little bit of guesswork to formulate my 2 deep that I think will project out this week for the game in Norman. All right. Now, getting to my projected depth chart for this week, you guys know, of course, I like to do this here to round out these snap count streams. Lead off with the injury report, then hit the snap counts from the previous week. Use both of those and a little bit of guesstimation to come up with a projected two deep for the Mountaineers for the coming week. And this is what we got this week. Not too much change, but a little bit. We got some guys coming back from injury and then some other guys that have been thrown into the lineup into the two deep based on their performance last week. So let's see what we got here. Quarterback remains the same, of course, Garrett Green and Nico Marchiol, 1 and 2. I mentioned running back, last week I made this change and it kind of showed it this week to be true. And hopefully I continue to see both of these guys perform well. And that's CJ Donaldson and Jaheim White. Then at the X receiver position, I think you'll have Hudson Clement back there as the starter this week if he's ready to go, with EJ Horton as the backup there. Then at the inside receiver position, where we have moved Devin Carter to that spot a little bit and worked him there. I've got him as the starter, but if he's not there inside and if he, goes outside, you'll see Rodney Gallagher III or Preston Fox. They've been having similar snap counts in recent weeks, but, with Rodney Gallagher, having 44 snaps this week, I think we're going to continue to see him used a lot. And that's not to say you won't see both those guys on the field at the same time. Preston Fox can play inside or out just like Devin Carter as well, but got to have somewhere to list them on the two deep, right? Then at the Z receiver, Traylon Ray continues to be a big piece for West Virginia, and Jarrell Williams, like I said, has gotten a handful of snaps in each of the past few games. The two tight ends, obviously, you guys know it's Cole Taylor and Traylon Davis. Along the offensive line, like I said, we're hoping to see it maybe back to full strength. We'll see how it goes, but left tackle, of course, Wyatt Milam, backed up by Nick Malone. Left guard, Thomas Remack, backed up by Brandon Yates. Center, Zach Frazier, backed up by Brandon Yates. Of course, Landon Livingston did get some work there, but if anything was to happen, Brandon Yates would be the guy they would turn to first. Then at the right guard spot, Brandon Yates is the first teamer, backed up by Jaquay Hubbard, who's been a key reserve on the offensive line for the Mountaineers this season. And then at the right tackle spot, obviously this is where we have the bit of the question mark because we don't really know the status of Doug Nestor at this time. Neil Brown just kind of termed it as questionable, and we'll see how it goes. Excuse me. So for now, we will put the or in between the names of Doug Nestor and Nick Malone because one of those two will get to start Saturday in Norman, and Johnny Williams, the fourth, kind of has been a reserve there for the Mountaineers. Also, of course, that's my projected depth chart for the offensive side. Flipping it over to the defensive side, not too many changes. Defensive end remains the same. Sean Martin as your first teamer, Tomi Durajaye as the second team guy. Defensive tackle, I still haven't been able to commit to a second teamer. It's been these three guys pretty much for the majority of the season, but they've been playing similar snap counts all season, and it's varied as to whose name has been at the top of the list, having the most of those snaps. But that's, of course, Steady Eddie V is the starter, and the three guys getting the backup reps there: Asani Redwood, Day Hawkins, and Jalen Thornton. And then at the nose tackle spot, this is where we get one change here. I mentioned, a couple players being thrown into the lineup that hadn't been here before, or at least in recent weeks anyways. And, of course, Big Mike Lockhart's been the starter there all season, and Fatorma Mulba has played a big role when you've seen him here as the second teamer, but had to throw him and Russell onto the depth chart this week with the or in between the names of him and Fatorma Mulba, as Hammond Russell outpaced him in the snap count this week for the first time in quite some time. And also Hammond Russell, of course, got involved on a sack and played really well, graded out highly too, if I'm not mistaken. So he gets up there with an or in between the names, and good to see a little bit of competition there. And West Virginia's defensive line depth is just absolutely phenomenal. I've never seen a defensive line like this as long as I've been a Mountaineer fan that has this type of depth and this type of quality depth, and you love to see it there. As we move on to the next position group, of course, and that's the Bandits, where it will continue to be Jared Bartlett and Tyron Bradley, and we've even seen those guys on the field together some at times this season, and who knows, you may see some more of that this Saturday And then we mentioned the linebacker position. Ben Cutter continues to be the Mike for West Virginia, the true freshman there. Caden Bizer will be the guy that comes in to spell him when someone does get those other snaps. And then here's the other change at the will linebacker spot. Of course, Lee Coburn remains the guy, one of the leaders of this West Virginia defense, but we throw in Tyreek Austin Cave now as the second teamer there at the will linebacker spot. Of course, Joffrey Veros lost for the season for West Virginia, as you unfortunately just add him to the now growing long list of players that West Virginia has lost for this season, unfortunately. But Tyreek Austin Cave is healthy, as a bit of positive injury news for the Mountaineers, I guess. And he has, been in the lineup this past week, got some snaps, as you saw me cover there in the snap count. So makes a debut here at the will linebacker position as the second teamer there on the depth chart. Then at the spear spot, we'll see if Hershey McLaurin's fully healthy now, 100%. I think he'll get the start. But just because of how last week went and didn't seem like he was exactly 100% ready to be thrust into the action fully, Marcus Floyd kind of outpaced the snaps there. I think that I'll put the or in between the name of Hershey and Marcus, but one of the two will get to go there, and then you might see Raleigh Collins get a handful of snaps there also if it's not Hershey or Marcus on the field. Then at the cornerback position, of course, Beanie Bishop and Malachi Ruffin will continue to be the guys there for West Virginia, and Beanie Bishop having a phenomenal season. More on him in a bit. I got a little bit of an update I want to share on him, and I've actually made another change here. I did previously have Andrew Wilson-Lamp backing up Malachi Ruffin because, him and Spells are kind of the two reserve guys. We know Wilson-Lamp began the season as a starter at the cornerback position for West Virginia, then was pretty much relegated to only special teams duty. Then had the mishap on, that one punt that we know caused a big issue for West Virginia. Then he really didn't play in the previous game, and haven't seen him play at corner in weeks. And so because of that, and because of Jacoby Spells really being the only other player getting reserve minutes, I've just got him as the backup at both cornerback spots for the time being until we see anyone else get in the action there. Then at the free safety spot, it'll be Aubrey Burks, and his backup will probably be Marcus Floyd. Even though you did see, Avery Wilcox get a little bit of action this week. Cat safety, of course, Anthony Wilson, talked about him having a great performance this week. And then I've got Malachi Ruffin or Marcus Floyd there because I think either one can play a little bit at that deep safety. We've seen them both get reserve snaps there for West Virginia, as West Virginia is just sorely, lacking depth there at the safety position and in the secondary in general, really. And then, of course, the kicker continues to be Michael Hayes, and he continues to be a very underrated transfer for the Mountaineers, and the impact that he's made, 12 of 13 now on field goals for the season, and his only miss was one that he actually made and then got pushed back because of a penalty to 50+, and he nearly made that as well. Oliver Straw continues to be the Mountaineer punter. Long snapper Austin Brinkman. Holder hopefully will be Grayson Malashevich if he's able to return. If not, it'll be Leighton Bechtel, the West Virginia punter. Kick returner continues to be Preston Fox after he took over that role 2 or 3 weeks ago. Him and Justin Johnson have been the guys back there for the Mountaineers. And, of course, Preston Fox also handling the punt return duties for West Virginia there as we round out our projected depth chart, for this week against Oklahoma. And got Kenny in here now. Appreciate you, Kenny, always tuning in and chiming in as well. He says, what a dominating win. Wow. Let's go, Mountaineers. Indeed. And Kenny, that provides me a great segue because I wanted to encourage everybody, if you haven't got a chance to already, be sure to check out our BYU Review and Reaction podcast. We just released that earlier this morning. You can watch the video version here on the Country Roads Webcast YouTube, or check out the audio version on any podcast platform, Google, Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, you name it, you can find it there. Just search Country Roads Webcast. And, if you didn't know that we released that, it's probably because you don't follow us on social media. So be sure to do that. Got our X on the bottom of the screen there at WVU Country Roads. And you can check us out on Facebook or Instagram at Country Roads Webcast. So that pretty much wraps up as all I've got as far as the main subjects of this stream, of course, that happen every week, the injury updates, the snap counts from the previous game, and my projected depth chart for the week. Encourage you guys one more time, drop any questions, comments, concerns you got there in the chat. I'll touch on them one more time before we wrap up here, but I did have a couple things that I wanted to share that I thought were really cool. And of course, one of those, I mentioned Beanie Bishop, and we had a really good tweet come out from Jed Drenning, who's one of my favorite people to follow on social media. If you don't follow him, definitely you should do that. And I mentioned Beanie Bishop having a phenomenal season, and I will talk more about that in a bit. And this is what I was referring to. Jed Drenning at the Signal Caller on X coming with this. Beanie Bishop's production has reached a different stratosphere. He leads the nation in pass breakups with 17. That's 4 more than any FBS defender and 6 more than any other P5 defender. He also leads the nation in passes defended with 21, 6 more than anyone else. And I actually think that he's since updated this. Let me see if I can find the updated tweet that he put out also on Beanie, because it was really good as well. Let's see here. Because he added, I think, 5 pass breakups, if I'm not mistaken, and I believe he told where Beanie stood nationally, or I'm not nationally, but as far as the West Virginia record is concerned, he's pretty close to breaking that. I can't see it here, but I know he listed how many it was for Brian King, and he's pretty close. I think he's about 4 pass breakups off. So good chance Beanie Bishop breaks that record for most pass breakups ever by a West Virginia defensive back, and that's a record that stood, 20 plus years. That's how long it's been since Brian King. So pretty impressive stuff there. He's been a big transfer pickup. And of course, I mentioned Michael Hayes has been a big transfer pickup as well, as far as field goals are concerned. G. Smyrna, though, coming with a good point here. Hayes needs to kick the ball out of the end zone. Saw the BYU recap earlier. They appreciate that, G. Smyrna. Appreciate you tuning into that. Means a lot, everyone that tunes into those podcast episodes. But yeah, I agree 100%. He's left a lot to be desired at times as a not the field goal kicker, as the kickoff specialist. He's done a great job as the field goal kicker. But it's really interesting to me too, because I know there was at least one game this season where he kicked like every kickoff out of the back of the end zone. So I don't know why he doesn't do it more consistently, if that is just this issue is that he struggles with being able to do it consistently or what. But I think Neil Brown even mentioned that a little bit today, that he's done such a good job as a field goal kicker, but needs to do a better job on kickoff. So that's certainly a good point. But, certainly been phenomenal as a field goal kicker, 12 of 13, and the one miss, he actually made before he missed it. John Kelly says, hopefully we'll be able to defend some of Gabriel's throws for sure. Beanie Bishop and the West Virginia secondary is going to be tested this Saturday. Make no mistake about it. It's going to be, a game for them to really, come out and prove themselves even more so than they have already, and do it against a very good offense, because Dylan Gabriel's a guy that, was in the Heisman conversation for the majority of this season and up near the very top of that, especially with that game-winning drive he had against Texas. And he's a guy that can, really put up some offensive yards. And Jeff Lebby's a good offensive coordinator, in my opinion. I know some of the Oklahoma fans, tend to disagree, and they aren't the biggest fan of him lately. But I think Oklahoma's going to come into this game pissed off and motivated, just being honest with you. So I think West Virginia is going to have to bring their very best, and hopefully the defense comes up with a great game plan and can really try and, make Oklahoma play with one hand behind their back, however they choose to do that, and make them, play with their weakness, and try and exploit that, because West Virginia is going to need to do that and really play some good defense to win that one for sure. And then I did have an update as far as the kick time for that Oklahoma game. I'm sure you guys have probably heard this by now, but just in case you hadn't, I wanted to share it here. And that is, of course, yet again, it is the same as BYU. I could have just kind of washed, repeated from last week. Back on Fox, yet again, another primetime network, primetime game for the Mountaineers. And it's another night game, 7:00 p.m. on the road. West Virginia's played a ton of night games this season. Love them when they come at Mountaineer Field, but would love to play a noon game on the road. Unfortunately, it's going to be prime time in Norman. So West Virginia has another chance, in front of a lot of eyes nationally, to make a statement, stay in the Big 12 conference race, effectively eliminate Oklahoma from it. And it's going to be, a great chance. And I talked about that 2021 game in Norman and how great West Virginia played. Well, that game was a night game as well, and Garrett Green got a good bit of action in it. In this game, he's going to even play an even bigger role. And, they came very close and couldn't quite get the job done in 2021 in Norman. But now this team's more disciplined. They're more seasoned. They're playing at night in Norman again, one final time as a Big 12 conference foe. Hopefully this time they've had the experience and they now have just enough edge to get over that hump this time and get this all-important win coming at 7 p.m. This Saturday night in Norman. Wanted to share that with you guys. And then I talked about, of course, Beanie Bishop being the highest-graded safety, according to PFF this week nationally, which obviously lands him a spot on their Team of the Week here, as you see shared from them on social media. Beanie Bishop as the one of the 2 safeties on the College Football Team of the Week for Week 10 of the college football season here. Defensively, I Thought that was pretty good as well. And then lastly, I mentioned Jed Drenning having some good stuff on social media. Here's another one that he put out. I believe he put this one out today and talked about Zach Frazier. And I think I mentioned this on the player grades video or on the podcast earlier, one that on some plays he was even, driving guys into the back of the end zone. And I believe this is West Virginia's first touchdown run, if I'm not mistaken. And Zach Frazier does just that. And as you see at the signal caller, Jed Drenning on X says, what you're looking at here, folks, is the best center in college football. Something I've said as well, so I'm not the only one making that statement. Put this one in the time capsule as the ultimate example of what coaches mean when they say finish. Check this out from Zach Frazier here. Drives him all the way back near the end of the end zone and drives him all the way to the ground for the knockdown pancake block as CJ runs into the end zone. And that's just an example of what Zach Frazier does, man. He plays angry out there, and it's awesome to see. I love having Zach Frazier. And like I said earlier today on one of the episodes that I released, I think he's going to be a guy that's up for some national awards at the end of the season. And that's something that not a lot of West Virginia football players have been able to say, and definitely not a lot of West Virginia football players have ever done, as Dan Moses is the only major award winner at West Virginia. But funny enough, it was another center. And speaking of Zach Frazier, I don't know if anyone saw it, but it was a play where the defensive tackle jumped off sides or into the neutral zone, and then he kind of fell on his knee, and I thought it was hilarious because Zach Frazier just started smacking him on the helmet. It really just made me laugh watching the game. I don't know if anyone caught that, but just bringing up Zach Frazier made me think of that. But appreciate you guys that got a chance to tune in here live. Like I said, I know not as many people probably get a chance to with us doing it earlier in the day, but the bonus side of that is we will be back live again later tonight following the basketball game for our post-game show, following the first WVU basketball game of the season here on the Country Roads webcast. So if you didn't get a chance to watch this one live, tune in on the playback, hit the like button either way, drop your thoughts in the comments. I'll try and respond in text form, but take the opportunity later tonight to talk with us live for the WVU basketball post-game show. But encourage you guys one more time, drop any thoughts you got here in the comments. I'll touch on some of those. And other than that, we'll get ready to wrap up this live stream here on the Country Roads webcast channel. John Kelly says West Virginia, Oklahoma at night under the lights. Doesn't get much better than that. Absolutely, especially West Virginia being at the position that they're in at this point in the season. 3 games left, tied for third in the conference. Certainly proving people wrong that predicted us 14th, right? For sure. Absolutely. I don't, G Smyrna, unfortunately. I wish I did. I haven't got a chance to look at the game notes really or anything like that, unfortunately. John says, yeah, we kept that going to the goal line. Was unfortunate. They blew that one dead. Yeah, I know that. It was funny too, because, CJ earlier in the game, pretty much the same scenario, and they didn't blow his dead, gave him the touchdown. But then Traylon Ray gets right there and gets knocked into the end zone, but they blow the whistle before he does and say they stop his forward progression. And I hated it because it was an awesome sequence for Traylon Ray, and it was only right for it to end in a touchdown for him. 3 catches, 42 yards on that sequence. But nonetheless, at least CJ punched it in the end zone, got his second touchdown, and it worked out well for the Mountaineers, as essentially everything did, went well in that game when it's a 37-7 win. But really enjoyed it and enjoyed talking about it with you guys here on this Snap Count stream. Looking forward to the Oklahoma preview later this week. We'll have our side of it, the Preview and Predictions podcast, releasing in the next couple of days. And then we'll come back here live Friday night to talk with you guys, get your thoughts on the game, and have you guys share your all's prediction for West Virginia as they head there for an important game in Norman. And we're looking forward to talking about that and talking about West Virginia basketball as it tips off tonight. So, as I stated, come back here for the West Virginia post-game show. And, of course, we've released a CRW Hoops podcast episode previewing that game. If you haven't got a chance to check that out as well. And we're releasing some more content on that side in the near future as well. So no better time to subscribe here to the Country Roads webcast if you haven't already. And we appreciate you guys that do just that and that tune into the content here as we push out this Mountaineer sports content with both these sports running simultaneously, and looking forward to a fun West Virginia basketball season and an exciting close to the West Virginia football season as well. Having said that, as always, I'm Jordan Cruz, and until next time, let's go Mountaineers.